Hey, today's daf yomi is Bava Basra daf Pei Aleph, Bava Basra 81. Today's daf yomi is dedicated for Shemira for the Chayalim, Matzah for the Shvuyim, and the Yeshua for Am Yisrael. And this is Sarah. The daf yomi is the daf yomi for Shabbos Kodesh, which we're recording on Friday. So the daf yomi says, "Hakonesh shnei ilanos," a person who buys two trees. Then we're going to say he buys them b'toch sedech chavero. He buys the two trees within the field of his friend. Harezeh will karka has not acquired the real estate in between. This is how Rashbam understands it. That stama, that as a baseline, he has not bought the land around the trees, even the space of the trees, and it's as though he bought it for its fruit, and so then when it dries up, they could lift it up and get rid of it. So such a case, he has not acquired the land around it. He's just bought the trees. It's as though he bought it for the fruit. Rabbi Meir Omer Kana Karka. Rabbi Meir says he has acquired the real estate because we're going to consider it as though it's a field of trees, and then he bought the real estate in between. Igdilo, let's say the branches grew and they increased, and the branches are now they're going over the other person's property. Then lo yishafeh. Then if the branches grew and now they're going back over into the seller's property, the seller's not allowed to trim the trees, because since according to the Tanna Kama, the seller is not selling any land with the trees, so therefore basically he's saying that my land is going to provide for your trees. So if the trees grow over his land, he's not allowed to trim them. And whatever grows from the trunk belongs to the buyer, and whatever grows from the roots, we're going to say Shalbala Karka, belongs to the seller. I mean, to say any shoots that grow from the tree above ground belong to the owner of the tree, but any shoots that grow from beneath the ground are going to be viewed as having grown from the ground and belong to the seller. So the Gemara says, the mesu and lo karkan, if the trees died because he just bought them for the fruits, he doesn't get the real estate. He can't plant another tree in its place. Kana shlosha, but if he purchased three trees, kana karka, then he's acquiring all the land in between. Because when you purchase three trees, you obviously mean to buy the land in between. Higdilo yeshafet. So now if it grows, he's going to then the seller can trim it because it grew back into his property. And he said, I was just giving you this property. And whatever grows from the trunk and from the roots belongs to the buyer. And if it dies, he's entitled to the real estate. So Gemara is going to discuss a Mishnah in Mesachas Bikurim, where Rav Meir and the Chachamim they seem to be arguing about the same idea that they are in our Mishnah. Again, the Bikurim is the concept that when you come into the land of Israel, you have to bring the first fruits of the 7 species and bring them to the base of Mikdash, and give them and be korei. You bring them and you recite a passage, and then you talk in this passage about your gratitude to Hashem, and then you give them to the Kohen in a basket. So the Gemara says, we say in the Mishnah in Bikurim, we say in the Mishnah Bikurim, if a person acquires 2 trees in his friend's field, maybe ve'eno kora, he's going to bring the Bikurim, but he does not recite the Bikurim passage about gratitude. Arami Oved Avi, and my father was an Arami tried to kill my father, or my father was wandering Aramean, because he doesn't own the land on which the trees grew. And so since when you say you say you've given me this fruits of the land, first fruits on the land that you gave to me, but if he doesn't own the land, how are they going to recite it? So therefore he's going to bring it, but he doesn't recite that passage. So the Gemara says, Rameir Omer maybe before says, under this circumstances, even if he just says a tree but not the land, he brings it and he recites the passage. So basically, we see from here, presumably, that Rabbi Meir is consistent with our mission, that just like in our Mishnah, Rabbi Meir says that you've acquired the land in between, even though the Tanna Kamma says you just acquire the trees. So too, with the case of the Bikurim, presumably, Rabbi Meir is saying the reason why he recites the Bikurim is because he's acquired the land in between when he has the two trees. So Amar Rabbi Yehuda Mishmul Mechayev Rabbi Meir Akbol Kech Peres Min Hashuk. No, that's not the logic, says the Gemara. That's not necessarily the explanation of Rabbi Meir, because Rabbi Yehuda says in the name of Shmuel, Meir would require you to recite the Bikurim even if you just bought the fruit from the marketplace, even if he doesn't own land. Mimai. How does Shmuel know that Rabbi Meir says you'd have to recite the Bikurim passage even if you just bought the fruit from the market? So the Ketani Mishnah is Sarah, because he learns this out from the fact that an extra Mishnah is taught in Bikurim. Michte. Let's look at it. It says Gemara. Tanole Diyesh Lo Karka. Our Mishnah is taught so that somebody, Rameir says that a Mishnah is taught that if somebody acquires two trees, he already owns the land. So if that's the case, Pshita de maybe Vikara. According to Rameir, it's obvious that he would bring them and recite this passage. So we see from here that Rameir is saying that is to tell you that you recite the Bikurim even if you just buy it, even if you just buy the fruit from the marketplace, you would recite it. Mara says, wait 1 second. How can you say that Rabbi Meir says that even if you just buy the fruit in the land, you would recite the Bikurim passage? It says that you bring from your land if you don't have land. So the Gemara says, no, it's Rabbi Meir would say that pasuk is to exclude if you got the fruit from outside the land of Israel. The Gemara says, but it says your land. So doesn't that mean that you don't recite if you got it from land that you purchased? Gemara says, no, that's from Yudei Ad Masakum. That's telling you that if an idolater owns the land, you don't bring it. But if you got it from a Jew who lived in Israel, then you would recite this passage. But it says that you bring the fruit from the land that you gave to me, not if it's from land that you bought. And Gemara says, no, that just means the that means you gave me the funds from which to purchase the food, not that you actually have to own the land. Gemara says, but Masiv Rabbah, how can you say that Rameir says you have to recite the Bikurim passage even if you just bought the fruit? Hakone Ilan, but then we learn the price. Hakone Ilan Echa B'toch Shachaber. If you just buy one tree in your friend's property, maybe Ve'ino Koreh, Fishalokan and Karka. According to the Tanna Kamma of this price, he brings the fruits and he does not recite the Bikurim passage because he has not acquired the land where the trees are growing. That's the position of Rabbi Meir. So we see from here, Rabbi Meir says that if you just acquire one tree, since he doesn't have the fruits, since he doesn't own the land, he does not recite the Bikurim passage. Direct refutation of Shmuel. So Gemara says, Tiyufta, you're right. And according to this brisa, Rabbi Meir would say, even if you don't own the land, you don't recite the passage. And so that seems to directly contradict what Shmuel says. Amoy Rabbi Shimon ben Eliyakim Rabbi Lazar. So Rabbi Shimon ben Eliyakim says to Rabbi Lazar, my time with Rabbi Meir what is the reasoning with Rabbi Meir when it comes to one tree that you bring the Bikurim and you don't recite it? My time with Rabbi Banan B'Shnei Yonos. And what's the reason why the Rabbanan say when you buy two trees, you don't recite the Bikurim passage? What's the question is, basically says the Rashbam, what's the reason why you bring it but don't recite it? You shouldn't bring it at all. So Amar Davar Sharishonim or Amar Botam Tishaleni Bebeis Medrash Kedelu Vaisheni. So Rabbi Lazar said to Rabbi Shimon ben Eliyakim, you're asking me a question about something that the earlier generations did not know the reason for, meaning to say they didn't say a reason, and you're asking me in order to embarrass me? Meaning we say Rabbi Shimon ben Eliyakim and asked Rabbi Lazar in public to explain the reasoning. Rabbi Lazar felt that Rabbi Shimon could not have expected him to provide an answer. So he said, you're trying to embarrass me. So he says, Amarabba, my kushya, what's the difficulty? Dilma Rabbi Meir B'Ilon Echad, Sepuke Misafkila. So he says, what's the difficulty? He says, maybe Rabbi Meir, by one by one tree, it was a suffix. He wasn't sure whether you got the land. And Rabbanan b'shnei Ilonos Sufuki Misafku. By two trees, they weren't sure. And so since they're not sure, they say you bring the Bikurim, but you don't recite it. They weren't sure if you got the land. So Mar says, but didn't he say, why is he saying when the mayor is in doubt? He says if you get one tree, you don't recite the Bikurim because you have not acquired the land. So he's clear that you don't acquire the land. So therefore, why should he bring the Bikurim, even though he doesn't recite it? Ema Shema will come to Karka. So we'll amend the text to say maybe he didn't acquire the Karka. We're not saying we're certain, we're just saying maybe he didn't acquire the text. Mar says, but wait, what are you saying? Just bring it out of a doubt. Maybe it's not Bikurim, and because he's not obligated, and if that's the case, you're bringing the fruits of the chulin into the azara. You're bringing these non-sacred fruits into the courtyard of the temple, and that would be a problem. Rashbam says that it's possible that this is a biblical d'oraisa, and it's possible it's a rabbinic, biblical avera, and some say it's possible it's rabbinic. If it's biblical, it's based upon the pasuk from Devarim. And if it's rabbinic, it's just that you're not allowed to take something into the Rabbanan said that people who brought things chulin into the Azara, you're not going to treat them with proper respect. And so therefore, then people might assume that they were actually really hektish, and then you could assume that you could treat hektish items lightly. And so therefore, they said you can't bring anything that's not consecrated into the base of Mikdash. So the Gemara says, no, the makdash that before he brings it in, he makes them hektish. And so therefore, even though they're not subject to Bikurim, he makes it hektish. I mean to say, he says, if they already have a state of Bikurim, fine. And if not, I'm going to be makdash them for their value. This makes the fruits kedushas damim, which gives them the temple property. So such property then is sold by the temple, and proceeds are used to purchase sacrifice. So therefore, they could bring them in. But Gemara says, but how can you make them hektish, which means they belong to the temple? The Kohen needs to eat them. The Kohen is supposed to eat these fruits. And Gemara says, the paraklu. No, the Kohen is going to redeem them. The owner is going to redeem them before he gives them the Kohen to eat. So basically, after the Bikurim service is completed, the owner will take an amount of money equal to the fruits, and he'll say, if the fruits were hektish with money, with kedushas damim, then let them be redeemed with this money. So basically, that's how he's bringing them in. He's bringing them into the courtyard, and then if they're bikurim, and if they're not bikurim, they're hektish, and then he's going to redeem them. Gemara says, but bikurim, you don't give truma or meiser from. You have to give the tithe. But if you're saying they're not bikurim, then he's exempting them from the requirement to give truma and meiser. So since the Torah calls Bikurim Truma, therefore you don't have to take Truma from them. So the Gemara said, no, the non-Kohen has to separate Truma on them. And so therefore we solve that problem. The Gemara says, Bishlam Truma Gedola. The Gemara says, okay, this makes sense if it's a case of Truma Gedola. Yoav well Kohen, he gives the portion to the Kohen. Meiser Sheni Nami, and the Meiser Sheni also, Yoav well Kohen. He's giving that to the Kohen, but Meiser Ani Nami, Yavle Kohen Ani. Okay, can give the Bikurim to a poor Kohen. You can deal with all these problems. Oh, Meiser Rishon the Levi have away, but the Meiser Rishon is supposed to go to the Levi, and here the Kohen is eating it. So how's he dealing with that problem? Gemara says, no, you give the Meiser to the Levi. Why? You give the Meiser that was biblically supposed to be speaking, given to the Levi. Now we're giving it to the Kohen. Yavle Kohen. Rabbi Lazar ben Azariah, the Tanya Truma Gadol Kohen, Meiser Rishon Levi. Divi Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Lazar ben Azariah says Meiser Rishon Afa Kohen. Rabbi Lazar ben Azariah ruled. Rabbi Akiva says the Meiser Rishon goes to the Levi. Rabbi Lazar ben Azariah says the Meiser Rishon also goes to the Kohen. What's the reasoning? The Gemara in Yevamos explains that Rabbi Lazar ben Azariah said the Bnei Levi doesn't mean only to the Leviim, but also to the Kohanim, because they're the descendants of the Levi. So therefore, he says that by biblical law, the Kohanim are also entitled to the Meiser Rishon. At the end of the Babylonian exile, Ezra penalized the Levium, and because the Levium didn't come back with him from Babel to Eretz Yisrael, and so therefore he said they no longer get the Meiser Rishon, and so therefore the Meiser Rishon is only supposed to be given to the Kohanim. Gemara says, "V'dilma bikurim ninu," but maybe these bikurim are really bikurim ubao kriya, and therefore they require recitation. Gemara says, "No, kriya will not kevas. The reading, the recitation of the passage is not necessary." Lo v'amar Rabbi Zera kol aroy lebila ein bila me'akeves bo v'shein aroy lebila bila me'akeves bo. Oh, so we say when it comes, this is a question as it relates to a mincha offering that needs to be mixed properly. Now, the mixing is not required, it's not essential, but it needs to be done in a utensil that is capable of mixing. This is basically the mincha offerings are flour, oil, and frankincense. Torah says that one of the steps which is done before the offering is the bila, the blending. But the bila itself, even though it's not required, it has to be capable of being mixed properly. And the Chazal determined that a mincha of 60 isarons or less can be mixed in one vessel, but more than 60 isarons cannot. So a mincha that's larger than 60 isarons cannot be brought in one vessel because it wouldn't be able to be mixed properly. Even though it doesn't need to be mixed, it has to be capable of being mixed. And so too, then the same principle should apply here. The Bikur service should be invalid since the verses are not able to be recited. Why are they not able to be recited? The Gemara on tomorrow's daf is going to explain. So before we get to that, the Gemara says, so he sent them with an agent. So we know that it's not required to recite it because let's say you send it with the agent and the agent died, and then the owner brings the Bikurim but doesn't recite the Bikurim verses in that case. So therefore, the Bikurim service is valid even without it. My time. You take it and bring it. It has to be done together, and here there isn't that. So Gemara says, since it's Bikurim or just Psukim, look, we're going to read it. Because it looks like he's lying. And or else alternatively, maybe he'll think he's exempt from Truma Meiser, so therefore he doesn't recite it under those circumstances. Okay, we'll stop here. This is a beautiful daf for Shabbos. A lot to discuss on it. Obviously, a lot to do, a lot more, but for now, we'll stop.